preparing. I think we're gonna be
We
live.
are.
Yeah,
Hi, everybody. We're back.
Okay, great. All right, we got it. Oh, welcome to Taking Our Break podcast. Today we're here with Gretchen Miller.
oh, yes.
So excited. We interviewed you by email, like I think in 2006 or 2008, because it seems like we were right on the same page. So I love that it's kind of like a circle coming
Yeah.
to in 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'd love just you to introduce yourself to the audience and who you are, what do you do, and what's your passion?
Yeah. Thank you all for having me. I super appreciate it. And I agree that it feels very much full circle from the early days of when our paths sort of crossed and sort of doing this now. So thank you.
Yeah.
I live in Northeast Ohio in the Cleveland area. I am a practicing art therapist. I've been practicing a little over 20 years.
Wow.
And I've mostly worked with youth and adolescents, but I've also worked with adults and women. A lot of the populations or settings that I've worked in throughout the years are connected to work that is trauma informed or trauma sort of focused. Really, art is a great way to kind of use in the art therapy work that I do in that capacity. And outside of art therapy, I enjoy making my own art.
Good.
Which I think is very important within the practice of art therapy and being connected to your creative self. I also teach art therapy as an adjunct and do different kind of workshops and sort of classes. What I'm most passionate about, in addition to art therapy, is definitely technology and the use of social media and kind of virtual kind of environments and platforms to really share your interests and things that are important to you and your values and sort of letting the world know those things. So yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell, I feel like.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like, yeah, you are intertwined into a lot of communities and subjects. And I think that's awesome. And given all that, and given your experience and your professional experience and personal experience and everything like that, that we thought we would start the conversation off asking you the question, how can art help you heal a trauma or just trauma in general?
Definitely was thinking a lot about this question and thinking about the work that I have done with different populations, youth, adults, and feeling that trauma is an ongoing process, like managing trauma. Sometimes it doesn't get sort of wrapped up sort of in a bow, like
Right.
that it's all good now,
Right.
I feel like a lot of the work that I've done within art therapy is helping the individuals or groups that I work with be able to manage or cope with or navigate sort of the world or life or the experiences they've had and living with kind of what has impacted them. So art, I think, is a great kind of way to create sort of self-soothing and kind
Mm,
of regulation and mindfulness and giving your attention to that present moment, versus, like your mind sort of wandering to like the past or, kind of racing into the future, which can
mhm.
happen. Art can really help center us and ground us. And being able to focus in that way can, I think, be really valuable for managing traumatic experiences or situations or stresses that you're experiencing. I think if you notice that art is something that is very helpful for you, or you have a strong sort of response to it, kind of connecting with an art therapist to sort of work with, who can then sort of really advance and kind of deeply like work specifically like connected to the trauma, then I think could be also very beneficial, versus just kind of the artist therapy, just using art sort of in itself, to
Right.
kind of help kind of create calmness and sort of that grounding. Yeah.
I love what you said about because I think it is. I think I even think that way sometimes too. You have a trauma, you kind of work through it. You work with somebody, and then you tie a bow upon it. You know what I mean? And then it should be
Yeah.
done. It should be over, right? And I think this is
Yeah.
what we believe as a society is, once I go to, do the work, it's all I'm fine. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, boom, you hit the
Yeah.
bottom. So what
Yeah.
I would really love to know, and if you could tell our audience, and even, I mean, everybody's traumatized in this whole world, especially with COVID. And I mean, we're just, no one can get out without trauma, right? So what I would love for you to share was how do you gently guide people through art therapy to make it a daily practice, or to a
Mm.
go-to when I am stressed out, or a go-to when I do hit that bottom and that trigger comes back and I feel the post-traumatic stress disorder. I'd like to know about that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think creating a sense of like safety is really important, whether that's like a safe place, a safe kind of visualization or image that kind of grounds you in feeling safe, to either kind of focus on before beginning,
Mm,
what you're going to be working on, or in times that you're feeling maybe a little dysregulated or anxious, or just having kind of a hard time. Sometimes being able to ground yourself in a safe place is really the first place or step
mhm.
in kind of doing more work, or continuing to keep doing that sort of work.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
one technique I like that I think it might is something that's easy to remember, at least for me personally, is you look for something you can smell, right? Something you
Yeah,
can
the
touch.
senses. Yes.
I
Yes.
love I
Yes.
love that one for a
Yes.
really quick grounding exercise,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yes.
I think you're right. I think because if you're at that edge and you are going either down like into that deep sort of worry depression, or up into that sort of manic like racing brain, you can't like just pick up a paint. I mean, I think some people do pick up a paintbrush when they have that tendency and when they've basically kind of trained themselves to do that. But if you're at the
Mhm.
beginning stage of this, I think that's a really great point, that grounding exercises are a really good place to start. So yeah, go through that 5 sense thing for us real quick.
Yeah, the senses are super helpful. So, being able to visually sort of see something and looking in the environment, of that, like 5 of those things, and maybe 4 things that you can hear, like sound, and then 3 things that you can touch, and
Mm,
to things that you can smell, and then also taste. One thing that you could maybe kind of taste and take in when we engage our senses, which really where trauma is sort of stored or kind of remembered, versus kind of the top of our kind of brain. The sort of our top of the cortex of our brain is very developed and very cognitive based and very focused on language and words. And trauma is very much like at a lower part of our brain, where senses kind of live, and imagery, and being able to communicate without words, which is why art therapy or the senses or doing creative expression can kind of tap into those things a lot easier or safer, or feel like less threatening, because you don't need the cognitive part, or the cognitive part is just completely not accessible. So senses can be a great way to ground yourself. And then also the senses can be something that also can be triggering too, because we remember, like we smell something, or we see something, or we hear something, and it kind of brings your memory kind of back to sort of that. So the senses are so very powerful for that, and art being a sensory based sort of use, of expression, so powerful for that.
Wow. Yeah, it's really a somatic expression, right? That you gotta get it into the body. But what comes up for me is like, because I think what Lauren is alluding to, maybe you don't have to sit down with a pen and paper. Maybe you can do things that are not like your traditional art concepts.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And
Yeah.
I think that's a myth that kind of needs to be busted, because when people think of making art or art therapy, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to, draw my portrait.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, Lisa. It's this misconception even about what art therapy is or what it can be for the individual. And I do think that art is what's so magical to me about art. There's so many things that are magical about art to me, but it's that it's an individual experience while also being a universal experience all in the same time. And so I think that art therapy and creating art around trauma are that as well. It's that you have to find what works for you. And I think that some people can pick up a paintbrush. I mean, that's what you did, Lisa, right?
Yes,
Paint it was your sort of savior. But it's not everybody's savior, right? Some people need to take a walk in the woods on a daily basis.
Nature.
And notice how the sound of the trees sound, or they need to, and I guess, our definition of art, and I know it's not everybody's definition of art, is very fluid and very broad. And I think it should be that way, because I think that there's more room for more people and more benefit from that.
Yeah. And I think that there's like making art and doing art, which I think a lot of times people may go to, when you mention art, and some people are like, oh, I'm not an artist, I can't make anything, or I can't do anything. But also there's the, participating, like even like viewing art, like going to a museum or a gallery or an event, and just participating in the arts or engaging in some way. And art isn't always visual. It's music, it's dance, it's movement, it's drama. There's so many different ways of expression, even, how you dress, your hair, how you cook, garden. I mean, there's so many ways that creativity can come out. And that's really valuable too for self-soothing and mindfulness, and helping regulate our emotions and
Yeah.
also our thoughts, definitely.
Is there something that you do on I mean, I know you create every day. You're very big and part of that movement. You've been part of that movement as long as, or if longer than us. Is there something that you do personally every day to as your art break?
Yeah, my daily creative practice has kind of slowed. I was doing a lot of 365 projects for probably like about 5 years or so. And that practice, like every single sort of day or a project kind of connected to that. I haven't done that in a formal kind of sense. But when I create art on a regular basis, I try to just kind of let myself kind of organically let things develop, because I can be a huge overthinker. And even though I maybe not don't have a really specific plan in mind, I'm like judging, while it's being created,
Mhm.
and just sort of like let it happen. And so I enjoy using watercolor a lot, and the fluid kind of nature of that, and also just putting the um, paint onto the surface, like
Mhm.
with the water, and just kind of watching
Mm.
the paint kind of spread out, or engage with the water, and just being very mindful sort of to that, versus, oh, I'm going to create and paint like this sort of picture.
Right.
Sometimes it's just slowing things down in that way. And then also, I really enjoy doing things with like patterns and designs, like Zentangling, or I mean, that
Mm.
is a really I don't know, like regulating kind of process for me to participate in when I had, and it's super simple. It doesn't take like a lot of time sort of to do that.
Yeah.
I know the projects that I did, the 365 projects, one of the things that was really important was that they were kind of manageable and kind of small. I did a lot of things on really kind of small, or index card sort of size, or artist trading card size, so it
Mm.
wouldn't seem so overwhelming, and I could do that versus like a big canvas, or even an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Just kind of seemed too
Yes.
daunting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hearing like not a lot of short amount of time
Mhm.
and a small work is how you were able to consistently
Mhm.
create. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah. And having like almost like a pouch, or a kit or something that I can carry around
Mhm.
with just really basic, simple materials. So whether I'm sitting at the doctor's office
Oh, I
or
love that.
wherever, you can like pull that out and just start working. I don't need it's my super fancy creative space. I mean, it's nice for sure, but I can kind of do this anywhere on the plane. I travel as much now with COVID, but
Yeah.
yeah, but I've kind of taken that out, and it's been helpful, definitely.
Yeah.
That's cool. I love, I mean, this conversation is great, but what I'm hearing, we're kind of reclaiming art, and it's art is about being in the present moment or mindful. This is what I'm gathering together. And it's really about art is about the five senses. It's not just about, visual. So it's really the activation. And
Mhm.
then I love that it's almost like you're participating with the universe, because I do that too, because I'm an automatic expressionist painter, and I just watch the paint go and do itself.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's amazing when you're kind of collaborating with the universe there. But also, I love that you said that for you, you take the small little things that you can create anywhere, more like really accessible. So that's
Yeah.
what art is.
Yeah. I know it is. I mean, I think it's One more question I have is, speaking of, so art helping you through a trauma, and I do agree that we have this notion that you just check a couple things off a list and you're good. We are a very much fix it kind of society where things
Yeah.
are laid out in black and white, and reality exists in the beautiful gray that we all need to embrace. I was wondering if you have a notion of sort of when someone who has experienced trauma should seek or
Mhm.
can know when to seek art therapy as something that they will benefit from.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because everybody does art, on their own. I mean, art in itself is a very therapeutic, just
Mhm.
the act of that, and um, as far as, really formalizing that in a therapeutic, with a therapist or a therapist sense, um, I would sort of recommend, if you really notice that when you're creating art or using creative expression in some way, that you have a strong reaction to that, either positive or negative.
Mhm.
An art therapist can be really helpful in sort of helping sort of guide that, or create sort of a structure for that that's sort of safe and contained, and also being able to connect it to like goals that you have for
Mhm.
yourself, like around trauma, and what you would like to kind of benefit related sort of to that, whether that's like treatment planning or things like that, versus just kind of doing the art just because it's regulating and soothing and all of that. That would be like one sort of thing, if you sort of notice with that. And I think it's also important to really highlight that you don't have to be good at art or have any skill or interest in art making to participate or engage in art therapy. It's totally okay if you're doing stick figures or just line shapes and color. You don't need to be good sort of visually or artistic in any way. Sometimes people kind of feel like
Mhm.
they kind of have to have that. And an art therapist would be able to sort of help with sort of guiding that sort of as well. I would say too, if you notice that that sensory based trigger kind of can happen for you, or just being able to express yourself more non-verbally versus cognitively
Mm.
as well. Um, because again, that cognitive kind of part is a little bit kind of shut down with trauma. So being able to work with an art therapist, I think, would enhance that and strengthen that and help me be able to process that sort of as well.
And now I've I have a question. So
Sure.
I'm always fascinated with the art wound. Like, something happened to somebody at some point where they were creative, but then
Mhm.
almost a trauma happened to them where they stopped creating and they're fearful of it. And we have actually a series on that. How can we help people that have art wounds? You know, and some people do get traumatized, but they go through it. What is your take on art wounds, and how would you
Mm.
help an art wound? And we also have people that are, we classify them like, because we have these art break days and we invite people to sit down and create. So this is when we're in public, obviously, but a lot of times people run away. A lot of
Oh,
people,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're always trying to figure out, we're always just trying to figure out, like, how do we get more people to sit down and create art and then to experience the benefits? So if you want to allude to the art wound, and what would you do with the
Yeah.
art wound? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question as well. I know there's been adults, older adults, that I've worked with or kind of cross paths with that specifically remember
Mhm.
a sort of moment in time where maybe a teacher or someone in their life when they were much much younger sort of did or said something that really impacted their confidence or ability to kind of see themselves as an artist or using art, because they didn't have like skill or talent or sort of the message of that. So I often, again, that creating this safe environment is really helpful, and an inviting environment I think is included within that safety, and that includes being like non-judgmental and really allowing the artist to freely express themselves without sort of I don't know, like tons of questions or interpretations, or just giving them sort of the space to just experiment without a expectation. And I think it takes time, that just because I may be encouraging like, oh yeah, you can just like create and whatever you do is great, and like that, like nobody like buys that, like they're
Right.
like, yeah, right,
Right.
you would just like say that,
Right.
but just really holding that space of being a support and sort of a witness, or just helping kind of sort of be alongside, and what you kind of create, that it's about kind of the process, and
Right.
not necessarily what it kind of looks like or the product or your skill level. I feel like I'm constantly sort of saying kind of that, that it's not about how well you create or the skill level with the work that I'm doing with clients. Although I mean, I think people do want to create something that they are kind of happy about or pleased or kind of feel good about, or I mean, not feel good like happy, but like kind of feel like, wow, I like did this. And I think there's ways to still kind of have that experience, but it not being like this thing that you envision will kind of, I don't know, like go up somewhere in a museum or a gallery,
Right.
which is kind of like what people sort of associate, like if they're good
Yeah.
or not,
Right.
like judging themselves, like
Right. I
no
think that's
pressure.
I think that's right. That's a really good point,
Yeah.
that if you looked at what you created just solely as, wow, this came out of me.
Mhm.
This is entirely myself represented in this object over here. And if we started looking at things rather than following sort of naturally what sort of capitalism teaches us, is that how much can you get for it, or is someone willing to sell it, and things
Oh
like that.
yeah,
And
the
I do
monetary
think
piece.
I
Yeah.
do think that people think that that is where your worth is, right?
Mhm.
And we're trying to have that conversation where it's very experience based, right? It's the
Mhm.
process, it's the
Yes.
and it's the growth that you actually can't necessarily see, because it's you, it's like your insides are
Mhm.
growing
Yeah.
per art break, right? And
Yeah.
that's
Uh-huh.
not something that is, you don't hang like it up on in a museum, and it's totally different conversation. I liked what you said about being a witness, and I feel like that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be that witness for the entire world, and also sort of that support system that says those things to people, that it's about the process, and it's not, you don't have to have some sort of divine gift for something, but if you do want that, you
Mhm.
can certainly work towards finding that within you, finding that style, finding that art break that works for you. And in
Mhm.
the meantime, feel better.
Mhm.
I'd like to add something to that. I feel it's like when I teach, and people create, I'm like, you just birth something new, right? You birth something that was never be there before. And I mean, if you think about it, if you had a baby and we went, oh, my baby doesn't look like that, that in the museum, or I mean, that's just not
Right.
right. If you look at art as precious as that, as you're birthing in, and you don't need to compare and contrast with anything
Yeah.
else in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it can be so hard to let go of that judgment or that inner critic, or hearing the voices that you've heard from, other people or experiences, or with even within yourself. And
Yeah.
so giving kind of that permission to kind of release that, sometimes it's that, and it's just taking the time, to develop that more. And I think you both touched on something else that I really value in art making, is the collaboration or being in community, like with other people, whether that's making art together, or being inspired or motivated by what someone is doing. I feel like a lot of the collaborative sort of art mail type projects and things that I've done, sort of online and using social media, that really engages like a group of people who are totally working in isolation, to
Right.
be able to kind of come together in some way. And that witnessing piece, I think, is part of that too, even though you're not maybe physically there, like with
Right.
somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's always been an interesting sort of power of art in my own personal experience of looking at art. You mentioned that you don't even have to make art if you're not ready to do that, but you could go look at it.
Yes.
I'm always fascinated about how I could go and see a work of art and have this experience. Oh, I'm not alone. I think that that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest things about art, is that you can walk in a room and feel an emotion and realize that the artist was feeling the same thing as you, and that you aren't walking this world alone. You may never meet this person,
Yeah.
but they have had a similar experience, and they went through it as well.
Mhm.
That's a beautiful sort of connection that I think art has this big power to do. And then when artists come together and collaborate, that is even a sort of a stronger bond. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Art can be so powerful to bring. I mean, I think it, like, art is moving. I mean, just the name of that. I mean, there's that movement, it moves you like emotionally and deep, and it also can teach you or bring awareness to things, either that you can resonate with and have experienced in some capacity, or maybe you haven't, but it's somebody else's sort of experience or story or voice, and you can feel sort of what they've sort of also sort of gone through, like through their art. And I think that is very valuable, in that sense.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks
Yeah.
for talking to us
Yeah,
today.
no, yeah, no
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, no, this is great. I love all the kind of organic, developments of,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. It was redefining art, but also like the power of the healing power of art.
Mm-hmm.
The bridging together, that art is a bridge for people, and obviously it creates empathy for people. It's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of, I mean, I think Lauren was, speaking to the heaviness of the world, and just, there's so much that's going on that has like deeply impacted and affected individuals and communities and sort of groups, that art is so helpful in being able to shed light kind of on that, and to also communicate and bring awareness or advocate. I mean, there's so many different roles that art can play for that, whether it's making or viewing or participating in some way.
Right. So how can people get a hold of you if they need some art therapy or just some inspiration?
My website, Gretchen-Miller.com, is sort of my kind of home base of where I put a lot of just constant, like regular, it's sort of like a holding place for a lot of the stuff that I'm interested in or the work that I do. So that would be a good place to start. And my blog, which I haven't been as active with, sort of keeping, I feel like it's kind of shifted into like other kind of platforms on social media versus like the whole blog writing sort of things. But my blog, there's like tons of like archive, like a lot of the 365 things that I did, I really documented on my blog, which is Gretchen Miller .wordpress .com. Yeah, I mean, it's called Creativity Emotion, so you could just like search for it as well. It's also linked on my website. Like the website really just has like all the different places to kind of go. So yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much.
Oh,
so
thank
great.
you. Keep up all the good work, and yeah,
right back at you. Yeah, I know we'll have to connect again and 20, what is it?
Yeah,
15 years.
I know. We'll have to do that again. Like, I wonder what that'll be like. Yeah.
I love it. Because I mean,
Yeah.
you said creativity, emotion, art is moving. So we're kind of like on the long.
Oh, yeah. I didn't ever think about that. That's very cool. That's a
Very
cool
cool.
like thing. I
All
like
right.
that.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks.
All right.